If you were to walk into Lascaux's supermarket on any given day, you would sense the familiarity of a grocery store. You wouldn't hesitate nor be surprised. There's an old pop song playing through the speakers, not too loud, but just loud enough for ambience. To the left of the automatic sliding doors as you enter are rows of shopping carts waiting to be filled with purchases. There are also 2 stacks of smaller hand-carried baskets for those who just need a few items. The checkout lanes sit in a nice neat row slightly to the right. There is currently only one green light turned on from a pole at lane number 3. The rest are a bright red to indicate that there are no available employees to man them at the time. That's okay, because on a Wednesday morning such as this, the store is almost empty of shoppers. To the right of the entrance is an aisle. Along the squeaky clean polished linoleum are racks filled with various coupons, newspapers, real estate guides, and a bulletin board in case you're looking for a used car, a multi-level marketing opportunity, or perhaps you found a lost cat named Mr. Bubbles. At the far end of this aisle is a brown wooden door. A square nameplate attached to it simply says Manager. It's through this door where a man sits behind a small metal desk. His chair squeaks as he adjusts his frame. There are old dented filing cabinets to the right of the desk. A fake plant sits covered in several seasons' worth of dust and cobwebs. The carpeting is a faded green which is threadbare in places where feet have trampled for years. There's a single window against the back wall which provides a meager portion of sunlight at certain times of the day. The man behind the desk is unspectacular. He's in his late 40s, perhaps early 50s. There's a handmade wooden nameplate on the desk which states that his name is Dennis Forth. Dennis has a protruding stomach and just enough hair to come over so his full scalp isn't on display. He wears a blue shirt with the word Manager stenciled on the left breast section. The shirt is wrinkled but clean, as are his standard issue khaki pants and black sneakers. Dennis is studiously bent over some paperwork, his head resting on his left palm, while the right is scribbling numbers and names onto the reams of papers before him. He's responsible for almost everything at Lascaux's supermarket: ordering stock, tracking product flow, balancing receipts with cash, checks, debit card transactions, and EBT usage. He's responsible for staff schedules and days off, making sure regulations are followed, floors are cleaned, shelves are stocked, and customers are happy. Dennis recalls 25 years ago when he needed a job in order to save enough money to leave this town forever and make his mark in the world. He's been at Lascaux's ever since, clawing up the ranks, eking out a barely sustainable living until he is now at the top, manager of his own store. His hopes and dreams a distant memory of what could have been. He reflects on this, but not for too long. No sense opening old wounds, and besides, he thinks he has a pretty good life. Single, balding, and married to the job might not seem like much to most people, but he's resigned himself to make the best of it, because what else to do? So he sits behind his desk, and he fills out the forms, and he breathes purposefully in and out, hoping that will sweep away the doubts from his mind like a strong wind blowing away dead leaves from a cold autumn ground. Today doesn't really exist. The thought comes to him from nowhere. A voice he doesn't recognize, yet one that carries authority and assuredness. He lifts his head from his hand and stares at the office door. What does that mean? Today doesn't really exist. Well, today's February 29th, Leap Day. It doesn't really exist. Dennis makes a mental note to make a doctor's appointment. Surely there is something wrong with him. Auditory hallucinations are often the beginning of far greater issues. You don't have dementia, the voice says. Leap Day is a chance for people to reset themselves every 4 years. It's a magical day. Nothing you do on this day will matter come morning. It's a day to right wrongs and cleanse your soul of the filth that bubbles there every day. And tomorrow, when the sun once again graces humanity with its life-giving power, Leap Day will be forgotten. No consequences, no remembrance. You'll awake feeling lighter, more energetic. You'll have the power to once again follow your hopes and dreams. You're trading the toxicity of a life unfulfilled for a clean slate. Did he have filth in his soul? Dennis figures he does indeed. It makes sense to him that negative emotions have to go somewhere. And isn't the soul a perfect storage container of such emotional baggage? Regrets, anger, sadness, grief. Where do they go after we've experienced them? Dennis finds it easier to believe the residue of such emotions remain in the unknown reservoir of the soul, rather than simply disappearing into the ether. The more he thinks on these things, the more it just makes sense. Every day these feelings show themselves, sometimes as flickers that appear for an instant and quickly snuff out like a candle under a waterfall. But sometimes, more and more often than he likes to consider, they take root in his mind. All of the injustices, the snickers and stares, the pitiful looks on people's faces when he tells them what he does for a living, an almost middle-aged man still wearing a cheap plastic name tag at a job which only a small measure of competence was required to succeed. His anger is a constant companion some days, and he swallows it down like a cold, hard biscuit. He smiles at customers, pretends to care about those lazy, half-assing young people he calls employees, and gives his very best yes sir and no sir to the corporate shitheads who are always ready to place any failure directly on his shoulders. The more he thinks on this, the angrier he becomes. And it's okay to let that anger flow, isn't it? It's Leap Day, a day that doesn't really exist. He can cleanse himself and be a better man for it tomorrow. That's exactly right, boss. A brand new you on a brand new day. All you have to do is let it all out like a sledgehammer through an aquarium window. Once you crack it, the rest is easy. Dennis Forth smiles genuinely for the first time in as long as he remembers. He gets up from his desk, straightens his tie, snatches up the letter opener from a shelf, and heads out the door into the beating heart of Lascaux's supermarket. Kelly Wrangler is a blonde bombshell. At 22 years old, she is aware of her sexuality the same way as a lion is aware of its superiority over its prey. She's been aware of this since the tender age of 13, when men much older than her stopped mussing her hair and started rubbing her shoulders, or her arm, or even her hips. They ceased calling her pretty and began calling her other things. Hey, sweetie. How's everything, gorgeous? You've certainly grown up nicely, darling. They gave her a wink, a smile, an open invitation, and Kelly pounced. She soon realized there were benefits to being physically attractive. Mort Robinson of Mort's Burgers and Shakes always gave her a discount as long as she kept a certain number of buttons open on her sweater. When Kelly was 16, she was the girl you wanted to befriend. She could get tickets to anything. She could get a couple cases of beer for a party or a bag of weed for friends. She wielded her sexuality like a ninja wielded a katana. When she applied for a job at Lascaux's supermarket, it was on a whim. She wanted to be independent, and she wanted to be something more than an object to be admired and used. She still wanted that, of course, but she was seeking some kind of independence. At 20 years old, she was hired. Now, aged 22, she seriously regrets that decision. She stands behind her checkout lane, bored to death. Why she was chosen for this dead-as-hell shift, she doesn't know. She examines her newly manicured fingernails while time passes by impossibly slow. There are no customers. She feels as useless as a pork chop at a kosher wedding. She leans against the cash register and lets out an exaggerated sigh. 3 more hours and she will be free. She can go to Liquor Up, the perversely named liquor store, where she knows she can score some free vodka. The owner, Wayne Fulton, has already stated that he's willing to trade. Wayne is a sleazeball, of course, but is always willing to negotiate. This thought makes her vomit in her mouth a little bit, but it's an option at least. And she has many options. She has choices and she relishes in those choices. Leaning against the cash register, she relaxes a bit. "How's it going, Kelly?" She almost falls over at the sound of the voice. It's unexpected and snaps her back to the present like a rubber band. When she looks up, Dennis is there. How he snuck up on her, she doesn't know, but he's standing there with his arms folded, less than 2 feet away. Creepy, she thinks. Kelly throws her chest out, much like she does at any situation. Give them what they want. "It's going fine, Mr. Forth." She smiles, aware that besides her bosom, her smile is the reason she has made it this far. Old guys are suckers. "Why aren't you cleaning anything?" Dennis asks. She looks at the floors, spotless and shiny. She has no answer. The racks of information material are all in place, each brochure placed in the right position. "I don't think that's..." She stops mid-sentence because something is happening. Dennis's hand is flexing. She's vaguely aware of a flash, a metallic splurge, then extreme pain. Something sharp and pointed has entered her head. She experiences pain so intense, a blinding intensity which she has no control over. The letter opener slices through the skin on the side of her temple, straight into the orbital zone. Dennis didn't plan this, but a lucky strike sent Kelly to her knees. She tries to scream, although a lowly gurgling is all she manages. Dennis is fascinated by the blood. Who knew that a well-placed thrust to the eye could produce that much? He wasn't trying to aim for the eye, but, in his frantic state, a stroke of luck. Kelly's body slumps to the floor. She's still alive if her wide eyes and gurgling moans are any indication. But Dennis can't half-ass this. He must purge his soul. He bends down and grasps the letter opener. A squelching sound erupts as he pulls the offending object from her retina. A splash of blood and yellowish gunk emerge behind where her eye used to be. "Well, Kelly, if you got time to lean, you got time to clean." He places his shoe on her face, holds her in place. He brings the letter opener up and plunges it into her exposed neck. He does this again, and again, and again. The amount of blood in a human body seems to be infinite. At least this is what Dennis thinks, as the normally waxed and polished floors turn to a deep crimson. Breathing heavy and feeling exhausted, he steps back to avoid getting any mess on his shoes. It won't do to have the manager in such a disheveled state. He's aware that his shirt and pants are stained beyond cleaning, but that's a worry for another time. He has work to do, and his next stop is the meat section. Wade Simmons is a tall, lanky, and awkward man. When he was 15 and experienced a growth spurt, his parents tried desperately to get him to join sports at his school. He would have made a great basketball player, or third baseman, or even a kicker for the football team. Anything really, as his parents explained. But Wade, he had zero interest in sports. Well, he had zero interest in playing sports anyway. His sights were firmly fixated on the athletes themselves. He never came out to his parents, or anyone else, but he never tried to hide it neither. He likes guys. What's the big deal? Of course, Finding a mutual thinking boyfriend in this part of the state, which was known to be homophobic at best, was a challenge. You and a buddy walking down the street? Nothing wrong with that. You and a buddy walking down the street while holding hands and maybe kissing? Ooh, big, huge, out of control problems. Wade just continued to live his life the best he could. When he first applied to Lasco's supermarket, he didn't know what he wanted to do. When he was assigned to the butcher's section, he freaked out a little bit. He hates cruelty to animals, even if those animals are the ones people prefer to eat. Could he actually butcher a pig? Could he even take a section of what used to be a cow and slice it up into steaks, ribs, and chops? The answer was yes. He took to it with a vengeance. He didn't know what he was capable of. Once he realized the meat was already dead when it arrived to him, it didn't take long for his skills to become apparent. He gave succulent portions of meat to hungry people, never once over or under taking advantage. He was a maestro of butchery. Dennis walks up to the counter. Wade notices the blood covering his manager. Hey Dennis, you got something on your shirt? Dennis looks down at himself as if he hadn't noticed. Oh, so I do. It's just a nosebleed. Now why don't you cut me out a nice juicy steak while you're back there? Sure thing, Dennis, Wade begins to cut, not knowing what else to do. Something is obviously very wrong here, but he's not going to pry. Dennis walks through the swinging doors, leading back to the butcher's counter. A nice steak and a little whiskey is what a hard-working man needs, Dennis says. Yes, sir. The smell of blood floats around Dennis. He's very familiar with that smell. Dennis walks past Wade. His eyes are fixated on the wall in the back. There are cleavers, knives of various shapes and sizes, and even a bone saw, which Dennis finds particularly interesting. He fondles them. You ever kill a man, Wade? Dennis asks. Wade continues cutting out the portion Dennis wants. His mouth is dry. He wants to ask what the hell that means, but has no way to express it. His hand shakes as he continues slicing. No, sir, Dennis. Dennis walks up to Wade. He stares at the boy for a minute before moving away. Well, Dennis says, it's therapeutic. Wade has his hand spread over the carcass of the rack of cow, ready to carve out a magnificent piece for Mr. Forth. Before his cleaver comes down, Dennis presents a cleaver of his own. With a fell swoop, 3 of Wade's fingers come off. His index finger is hanging on by a very thin piece of cartilage. Wade screams, but the jettison of blood dictates that his screams will not last long. Dennis throws him to the ground and raises the cleaver above his head. One downward thrust sends Wade to the great beyond, his brain matter and blood mingling with the rest of the animal smells. Dennis is breathing heavily when he hears the familiar ding of the front sliding doors of Lasco's opening. Shit, he said. I forgot to lock the doors. This doesn't scare him, but it is an annoyance which he really doesn't need right now. Walking inside are Becky Smalls and her son Curtis. She normally shops at a Walmart not far from town, but today is special. Today is Curtis's birthday, and Becky wants a cake that reflects her small-town heritage. She wants her son to grow up being a man who appreciates the sacrifices and hard work of small-town America. Of course, it probably won't work out that way. Young people want more than just a small-town existence. She figures her son will one day move away just as quick as he can and leave her to wallow in her questionable choices. She doesn't blame him, nor will she attempt to stop him. When that time comes, it'll be what it is, but she'll love him no matter her decision. They walk into Lasco's looking for sweets. Curtis loves cake. That's her sole purpose for living right now, find the perfect cake for her son's birthday, and spend the rest of the afternoon creating a perfect day of what will be, in the future, nothing but a happy memory. She has no other thoughts or intentions until they see Dennis. Dennis approaches quickly, the blood on his uniform still not completely dry. He's holding a cleaver in one hand, still dripping with the essence of Wade, and a letter opener in the other, still wet from the unfortunate but necessary death of Kelly. "Help you?" he asks, without breaking a stride. He looks like a madman, and he's aware of this, but still, he's a professional, and greeting customers is an important part of that. Becky screams. Her mouth instantly turns as dry as a desert. She grabs Curtis and runs towards the door. Dennis runs after her. He can't let this woman escape, so he runs. Becky runs also, with her son's hand firmly in her grasp, his feet barely touching the floor as he's dragged behind her in her death grip. Dennis soon realizes that he's not going to catch her. He hasn't properly exercised in years, and he's already exceeded his limits with all of the chopping and stabbing. It's much more physically taxing than people think. As the doors swing open, she's relieved somewhat. She continues to her car. She throws Curtis inside, jumps into the driver's seat, and peels out of the Lascaux parking lot. Dennis watches from inside. Nothing he can do now. He can't believe he forgot to lock the doors. He locks them now, though. No matter. Tomorrow it will all be okay. A clean slate. Dennis walks back into the store. There's only one person left. A person so far removed from the general area that he doesn't hear a thing. Dennis heads to the pharmacy. Walt Drucker thinks he hears screaming. But that doesn't make sense. It's probably just some spoiled little brat throwing a fit because his mommy won't buy him their favorite cereal or some dumb shit like that. He's been the pharmacist here for almost 10 years, and never once has he had a complaint. Sure, he's heard complaints about others, but never about him personally. If those young people who chop the meat, stock the shelves, and check out customers don't comply to a certain standard, he doesn't care. He's a professional. His mind is as sharp as a razor blade. And what a motley crew this place hires. Walt sometimes can't believe that they hired that gay kid in the butcher's. That degenerate handles the meat, for God's sake. Who knows what kind of queer diseases he passes on because of his filthy sexual habits. No, Walt buys his meat from Frankie's butcher shop in the next town over. Good old Frankie is a straight shooter and just plain straight. The way the good Lord intended, if you ask Walt. The bimbo at the checkout isn't much of an employee. Like the rest of her generation, she's self-centered, lazy, and doesn't understand a thing about hard work. But Walt has to admit that she's got one hell of a rack. 100% perky boner fuel. Walt is old, but that's never stopped him from thinking about her when he's taking a shower. Nevertheless, he knows how to do his job, and he does it well. Walt fulfills his orders. Samantha Brewer is coming in soon for her allergy medicine. Stuart Jenkins is renewing his erectile dysfunction protocol. And Billy Somerset is looking forward to his Prozac, which does nothing good as far as Walt is concerned, but it's his job to give out medicine and not advice. He won't complain. Walt hears something wet coming down an aisle to his right. A squelching sound. At first he thinks someone must have spilled a milk carton or something and walked through the puddle. When Dennis emerges from the corner, Walt wishes it was just spilled milk. At first he's not aware that this is the store manager. Dennis has looked better. His hair, what's left of it, is sticking up around his head. He appears sweaty and out of breath. Walt can hear his phlegmy inhalations, but it's the blood that's most alarming. Walt has no way of knowing it's blood, yet he knows just the same. Dennis is swinging a cleaver from one hand and holds on to something else in the other. He looks maniacal. Walt's first instinct is to run. Whatever is happening certainly can't be good, and he now thinks about the scream he heard earlier. But Walt does not run. How could he ever live with himself if he ran away from the soft, mild-mannered, out-of-shape, middle-aged manager of a supermarket. He'd never live it down if people found out. So he stands, watching as Dennis slowly makes his way to the pharmacy. "Walt, I need some painkillers. The stronger the better. I think I pulled something," Dennis says. "That's against the law, Dennis. I can't just give those out. What the hell happened to you? Do I need to get a weapon?" Walt tries to keep it casual, but there's a waver in his voice. Now that Dennis is closer, he can see chunks of fleshy bits sticking to the bloody clothes Dennis is wearing. Dennis chuckles as if Walt's being silly. "Weapon? What on earth for?" Dennis is twitchy. Walt is tense. They stare at each other. They both know chaos is about to erupt, but neither acts like it. Finally, Dennis smirks. It's a smile filled with malice, and Walt curses himself for not just running when he had the chance. Dennis moves with a swiftness belying his age and physical conditioning. He springs over the counter while simultaneously swinging the cleaver in a wide horizontal arc. Walt turns to run, but he's too late, taken off guard by Dennis's agility. The blade of the cleaver slices him open across his back. He feels liquid like a river running down his spine. His skin feels like someone has a flame to it, his nerve endings singing in agony. Walt stumbles forward, landing hard on one knee. Something pops inside, but he's already on his feet, using the shelves for balance. Pill bottles and containers fly from their places. He's screaming now. At least he's pretty sure it's him making that horrendous high-pitched noise. Dennis swings with the letter opener, barely missing the back of Walt's head. "Come on, Walt," he yells. "This is a day of new beginnings. It'll be better tomorrow. Just let me cleanse my soul, you self-righteous asshole." Walt scrambles through the narrow aisles in the back of the pharmacy. He's looking for anything to use as a weapon, but there's nothing. He hears Dennis yelling gibberish, but it's not registering. He's also losing a lot of blood, and he sees the edge of his vision turn dark. He knocks as many shelves as he can in the path behind him. If he can just make it to the emergency exit in the back storeroom, he should be okay. There's no light on back this far. No reason wasting electricity for an area you'll only use twice a day. That's what Walt was told. He stops and listens, his breathing ragged. He has to rest. Between the adrenaline wearing off and the blood loss, he's feeling a bit woozy. He hears nothing. Dennis isn't following him, raging through the mess, stalking him like a victim in a horror movie. No, everything is quiet. Walt swallows, although his mouth is dry. He calms himself, and as quietly as possible makes his way to the storage room. He turns the handle and pushes on the door. It's locked. Walt's keys are under the counter at the front of the pharmacy. He turns, almost expecting what he knows he'll find. Dennis doesn't disappoint. He stands less than 6 inches from Walt. His smirk is a bloody scar across his face. Almost made it. Dennis swings the cleaver once more, and Walt's head is halfway separated from the rest of him. When his body crumbles to the floor, Dennis finishes the job. After all, a job worth doing is a job worth doing right. Dennis is tired when he hears the sirens. Cars come screeching to a stop out front, bathing the entrance in flashing blues and reds. Voices can be heard giving orders, and the stamping of boots on pavement soon follow. The glass in the front doors shatter. Dennis trudges forward up the middle aisle. An older man in uniform has a gun pointed at him, as several others do the same from the sides. When he is told to drop his weapons, Dennis does so. When he is told to place his hands behind his head and walk backwards toward the officer, he complies without hesitation or complaint. When he is taken to the ground, rather roughly in his opinion, Dennis doesn't resist. There are words being said about his rights, but he just nods. It doesn't matter any longer. Leap day will be over in a few hours, and tomorrow will be a new beginning. Dennis smiles, genuinely this time, because his soul has been purged. He'll wake up in the morning in his adequate bed, eat his adequate breakfast, and come into Lascaux renewed. He feels sorry for the way he treated his employees, but they'll understand. He's sure of it. And maybe he'll give them all a little raise. In 4 years, he can do it again. This makes him happiest of all. Dennis says nothing. He sinks into the uncomfortable back of a squad car and sleeps. The end.